Welcome to the first episode of the Skewed Technology webinar series. I thought that it'd be great to start this series to share some of the technology that I get exposed to through my connections, but it'd be worthwhile sharing these tools with my network, and I'm hoping that you find these sessions of value. I always think that it's good to kind of broaden your horizon and get exposure to the technologies that are available to you out there on the market. So I'm hoping that today and in the future episodes that we bring out over the following years will be of value to you and help you within your organization. So today we're going to look at spaces from Cerulean Labs, and we've got Campbell, Danny and Martin here with us, and we're going to go through a bit of an introduction software and a bit of demo, and then we'll close out with some Q&A. But I encourage you throughout this session to engage in the chat. Just pop your details in. Vimeo doesn't steal them from you, so that you can engage in the chat. It'd be really good along the ways if you put those details in, and we can engage in some conversation at the end of the presentation. It's not going to be a long presentation today, nice and short, so you can get an understanding of the power of spaces. Now, for me, this tool's a groundbreaking tool because what it's doing is it's bringing along the digitization of the concept design stage or phase within a project. And for the people that are more of the nature of sketches rather than actually, using BIM authoring tools, for me, I see this as kind of the tool for them. All you need is an iPad and a pencil, or an Apple Pencil, and away you go. But now I'd like to hand you over to Danny and Martin to begin their introduction. So take it away, gents.
Good evening and good morning to all of you, and thank you for joining us. My name is Martin Sheehan, CCO of Cerulean Labs, and today my colleague Danny and I would like to introduce our awesome tool, Spaces. We will have a short intro to give you some background, which will be followed by a more detailed look at Spaces in action, which will be driven by Danny, followed by a Q&A session where you can ask us questions directly.
Hi and welcome everyone. My name is Daniel, or Danny. I'm an architect by profession, and prior to joining Spaces, I have spent 6 years in the building industry as an architect, both in Budapest, Hungary and Dublin, Ireland. That was followed by 10 years with Graphisoft in various marketing roles. Then my passion for digital technology led me to join the Spaces team 2 years ago. And today I have the pleasure to introduce you our conceptual design tool, Spaces by Cerulean Labs. So more from me a bit later, and now back to Martin.
The digital age we live in has brought many positive advancements, yet the question of how and where to begin is still one that can cause bottlenecks and frustration at the conceptual stage. Most studios that we speak to find that initial sketching creates discussion and design inspiration, but the current authoring tools don't fit in with the sketch, edit and refine stage of the project. This is very much where Spaces fits in. I'd like to take just a couple of moments to introduce us and Spaces. Spaces is an iPad-based conceptual design tool for architects and architectural designers developed by us at Cerulean Labs Limited. Spaces targets the early design stage of the architectural workflow, which is currently underserved, and integrates into existing solutions for subsequent stages. We released on the Apple App Store in October 2021. We have fortnight releases, and we very much love feedback and working with our customers to further improve the tool. Spaces combines the freedom of sketching with the power of the iPad to provide a fast, fluid and flexible approach to conceptual design. The app allows design sketches to evolve. They can be traced over, refined, thrown away, started again. The choice is yours. And it's designed so that a user can pick up spaces and produce something within minutes. It's as simple as sketching on a piece of paper, keeping sketching relevant in a data-driven age. Multiple design options can be created and explored quickly, and coupled with an immensely powerful computing platform, sketches are brought to life and transformed, incorporating data-driven, computational and parametric design. Spaces is all about combining the freedom to sketch and explore ideas along with usable, transferable data and meaningful reporting. From small to large scale, Spaces takes early stage design to the next level where quick and easy does not mean making compromises. You get accurate building data at your fingertips. You use key insights as you iterate your design, and building information is instantly accessible. You can export your concept to IFC, so you can kickstart your developed design in the BIM system of your choosing, and all spaces and metadata are transferred. We have a variety of different ways in which you can access Spaces. We have freemium, standard and professional plans, and free trial for paid subscriptions. All of the information can be found on our website, and we do operate a floating license structure. We believe that with all of this in mind, it gives you the scalability and flexibility that's important to your business in the modern age. With that done, I'd like to hand over to Danny, who will show you Spaces in more detail.
Thank you, Martin. To start with, let me switch to my demo setup first. Now, Martin mentioned the pencil as a key advantage, making the design experience really sketch-like. So during the demo, I will use my Apple Pencil and iPad, just like I would do with a real pencil and a sketchbook. This is how the main working area of Spaces looks like, a split view of the 2D and the 3D space. All great architecture starts with a line. So let me quickly sketch the contours of a building with some simple strokes. By default, as soon as I close the polygon, the 3D model is created automatically. This setting can be switched to a manual mode here in the bottom right corner by turning off the Create Items Automatically option, in which case the 3D is extruded only after a finger tap within the contour. With the 3D model created, we have instant feedback about the size of the building here in the top right corner. This always gives you a good understanding about your design in real time. The building is also created with some handy defaults like the number of stories, story height, etc., which also can be tailored in the contextual settings here on the left. But for sure, you can adjust every aspect of your design on the go too. For example, with the building selected, you can turn on Edit mode and change the footprint with freehand strokes as you like. You can also remove unnecessary lines easily with squiggles. Once you are happy with the edits, you can hit Accept and the model is updated instantly. For those who prefer a more fluid approach, we have the interactive editing mode available with the Create Items Automatically option still turned on. In this mode, just like with the building creation, as soon as a design intent is detected, changes are applied to the model instantly. This sketch-like editing not only works in the floor plan, but you can also change the height of the building with the pencil too. By pulling up the Datums palette from the top right corner, we can simply add or remove stories from the building by moving these datum levels. The height of an individual story can also be changed by sliding the corresponding datum level. In case you need exact sizes, you can also set precise numeric values via the settings. At this stage, probably it is time to explore the size of the building in more details and break down the overall size into usage types. Therefore, I just have opened up the usage palette from where I can simply drag and drop usages to stories. A default usage type can also be assigned to the entire building via the settings. This provides us with a more detailed real-time report. With these details at your fingertips, probably you start to want more precision during editing too. For that scenario, we can turn on dimensions and enable vector editing. In this mode, we still can use the interactive sketch editing to shape either the entire building or maybe just a selected story, like that. For a better picture, we can also turn on the visibility of stories above and below of the currently edited story. Now, when the vector edit mode, when we switch to the edit mode, we will have a completely different design experience. So let's reuse the size of this power plant at the top of the building. Also, I wanted to have a recessed ground floor. Something like that. All of these editing options are working on the building facade too. This is how the facade editor looks like, where I can select the face and edit it either with freehand strokes or with the vector edit mode we are also familiar with already from the footprint edits. Curves also can be applied to building faces. Now, in a real-world project, most probably you would have a site to work on. In Spaces, you have a couple of options to import your site. You can either import it as a background image, or even better, if you provide the exact address, you can import not just the map as a background, but the models of the surrounding buildings from the OpenStreetMap too. Now, I'm not that familiar with Sydney downtown, but I have spotted a nice area on the maps. So let's use that as an example now. Probably you are more familiar with this area than myself. Details of the surrounding buildings depend on the OpenStreetMap database, but once imported, these surroundings can also be edited just like your main project. So let's just reduce the size of these surroundings to better match their real-world height. This rich context can really help to speed up the design. However, in certain cases, or better to say, from certain viewpoints, these can be also in the way too. In that scenario, we can turn these surrounding buildings to be transparent, or maybe even better, we can hide them just in the case when they are in the foreground. Now we have a nice context to our design. So let's say this is the site of our imaginary residential development here. And let's also move the building into its planned position. Something like that. Now, with a real site under our building, we have some meaningful reports already at hand. In the reports view, we can check detailed usage reports, site coverage report, as well as check floor space ratios. Now, we believe sketching remains the quickest way to get your ideas down, and oftentimes it is easier to collect your thoughts and ideas in a more traditional format. Therefore, Spaces offers you a digital sketchbook where you can trace over your 3D design just like you would do with trace paper. So, let's see. I like very much this curved fracture in the middle of the building, which I would like to emphasize a bit more in my final design, maybe with some curtain walls like that. Also, I think this shape would probably work better with a curved front face, like that. Last but not least, this design probably would need some columns to better support the upper part of the building. So let's check how we would achieve these changes in the model. With the column tool, we can create both standalone colonnades as well as intelligent colonnades that are linked to a building. In this case, I'm linking my columns to the first floor of the building and just adjust some of its parameters to better match my idea. Similarly to the columns, cladding can also be applied to building faces easily. For that, we have a couple of presets available, but these can be adjusted on the fly too. These building parts are smart, meaning that they automatically follow the building changes, so no tedious updates are needed. Let's check how that behaves when I apply this curved front face. And I also can change the footprint and the cladding and columns follow my design. Great, we are getting there, but let's just run a sun study to check how our design fits the neighborhood. As we already have set the exact location of the development with the site import, we have a real sun available for the sun study. With that, we can examine the effects of the sun at any time of the year. Also, switching the 3D to a top view provides us with an even better overall picture. Now, we have a good idea about our design, and maybe it's also time to get even more detailed with usages. So for that, we can split the story into spaces. And then we can assign usages to each of these. This allows us to get closer to a design that matches the design brief. Last but not least, we want to share our design with the client or colleagues. That can be easily done with the cloud share functionality of Spaces, with which the client will gain free access to our work. Both the model and the sketchbook can be shared this way. Among others, Spaces also supports a IFC export, which integrates Spaces into the overall design workflow that kickstarts the design development in the BIM system of your choosing. The exported IFC contains not just the Spaces but all their metadata. So if you haven't already, jump across to the App Store and download Spaces to have a first-hand experience. Once you are in the app, you can check the cloud storage and start your exploration through any of our example projects available. Or you can simply browse our tutorial videos available through our integrated help center. And well, this concludes my presentation. Should you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer that. And thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
Thanks very much, guys, for the presentation. Greatly appreciate your time today, Campbell, Danny and Martin. Personally, for me, I get excited when I see this application because of the amount of years that I have had to work with people in my team that were analog people, and myself being someone that is living in a BIM authoring software world. I do some sketches, and I still have my yellow trace sitting right here, so I still haven't converted fully over to a digital world, but I get excited about this because of the potential to take this content from this application and into the software and speeding things up. So thanks very much for that. Now, first of all, we've got a couple of questions from the audience, and I encourage the audience to continue to put your questions into the chat. Remind you that you just need to put your name in there. Vimeo doesn't capture your details. Do not be scared. It's not going to cause you any grief, because I do see there's a fair few people on at the moment, so it would be great to have your questions, unless Danny's presentation was that good. You actually don't have many questions because he covered off on everything. But first of all, and this is very much in line with my thinking, and Martin, I'll start with you on this one, with regards to the targets of the application, and it's about people that are sketching in the analog way, and I kind of sometimes call them dinosaurs, or if people have seen my T-shirt about digital killing the analog star, they might get the idea. But the key question is this application you guys have been working on for a few years now. Do you have an example of I call it almost like a customer success story, or an exciting piece where someone's just gone and said, you know what, I'm an analog person and now I'm going digital?
Well, we have engaged with what you would call analog thinkers. I probably wouldn't go so far as to call prospective customers dinosaurs. That probably wouldn't start the conversation off particularly well. But they do become quickly engaged and inquisitive, which is one of the strengths of when we have the conversations about spaces. It does drive that curiosity. I think one of the things that removes the barriers, it is still ultimately sketching, but in that digital age, to coin the title of the webinar. But On top of the design workflow, Spaces also has a sketchbook, where you can embellish the design with the trace functionality. But ultimately, it's designed to be easily accessible, which removes, the main barrier from switching from analog to digital thinking.
No, it's a positive thing, and the more we can move people forward, the better. Now, Danny, there's a question from John. Can you add windows?
So we don't have a tool explicitly for windows or doors, but we have the cladding tool in mind for that. So to give the idea, provide the design idea to the clients of the architectural practices. And with the cladding system, as I mentioned earlier, it's let's say I want to apply that to there, and again, it's very easy to adjust these frames to match the design idea. Also, we have some presets to mimic framed entrances or canopies like that.
There's a comment from Ramon. Great tool, thanks a lot. Can you create native ArchiCAD elements like walls and slabs when importing? Now, Campbell, I'll hand that one over to you because you're an old-time ArchiCAD person. We won't go into that today.
Okay, so you want to call me a dinosaur as well by the sound of things. Yes, I did first see ArchiCAD last century and coming up for a 30-year ArchiCAD user. I guess just to jump back on the analog to digital theme, that's a core part of what our vision has been with Spaces, is to bring across these people who are living in the analog world. Jumping from those non-digital tools into ArchiCAD, Revit, or whichever BIM system you use is a challenge, especially for the design architects who simply don't have the time or the bandwidth to invest in a technology like that. They're juggling multiple roles, client relationships, on-site projects. And so we wanted to just create a targeted tool that they could use anywhere when their creativity hit them. But in order to be able to do that in a system that could integrate into their office. So with regards to a link through the design workflow, we use IFC at this stage as the base transfer mechanism. IFC has, in similar ways to DWG, started to become a lowest common denominator. It allows us to put the spaces and the metadata out into other systems, be that a BIM system or an analysis system. But we also recognize that to really leverage what we produce in Spaces, we need to start moving down a native route. And so all I can say is that we do have some proof of concepts happening at the moment where we would be able to use the BIM system of your choice and directly open a Spaces file. And the intention is that at that point you would be able to tell the system to create walls of a certain size, slabs, etc. Obviously, when it comes to something like curtain walling, it gets a lot more complicated to transfer from one system to another. We could transfer all the individual components of a curtain wall, but we would lose the underlying intelligence. So at this stage, we'll probably draw the line at the main architectonic elements like slabs, walls, ceilings, roofs, sites. And then people would be able to put their design intent into the curtain wall tool of that application, where obviously you're getting into the detailed design stage, so you need the intense control that those systems provide. Spaces is all about producing things quickly, easily, flexibly. We don't get into the exact details. We do use spacing parameters and everything, but it's more to create a look than it is to create a precise design.
And I think that's a critical thing, isn't it? It's that step before you would go to a BIM authoring platform to do that. It's that kind of, you need that step. Otherwise, there's other kind of tools out there like SketchUp. This is kind of like something that is meeting an earlier need that you kind of then could transition and then use it as a basis potentially. Like in many ways, in seeing this tool, I look at it as an opportunistic thing to opening up the door to kind of digitizing the way in which analog work's done and making it a lot quicker, because we all know hand sketching is always a challenging thing to keep neat and reiterate, and then photoshopping, whereas this, it all kind of sits there within it, which gives it that kind of extra life. And I hope that answered your question, Ramon. Now we got Geordie. Now it's good to see you on here, mate. I really, it's good catching up. We've got to catch up again in a couple of days to talk about some other things. But he likes the development from the first examples floated, so that's great. He's got a question with regards to if you do not have the option to import the area or site. So at the moment, obviously using OpenStreetMaps, I think it was, wasn't it, from memory? If you can't bring in that site because that site information isn't available, could you advise the fastest way to sketch the correct site plot size? And Danny, because you've got your iPad open, I'll direct that one to you.
So as mentioned in the demo, if I'm not sure if I take the question correctly, but if you don't have a precise address, and that's why you cannot import your site, you still can import a plain image, a JPEG or something like that to use as a background for your design. If you don't have that either, then my best bet would be to turn on dimensions and simply start sketching, so you have the exact sizes of your strokes available, and also you have this scale at the bottom of the screen which helps you during your design.
Hopefully
we have a site tool that so the same way as we create buildings, you trace the outline of your site. Once you have drawn a site into the system, then a series of other reports get unlocked, so we can start doing site coverage reporting, floor space ratios, so critical sort of planning metrics that you use. The question obviously was asking a little bit more about sloped sites. We currently don't do a sloped terrain at the moment. It is one of many things on our roadmap as a fresh company. And as a fresh company, we do take feedback on board very seriously. I mean, we're at a point with our development where we're getting people on board using the system has a really strong influence over the direction that we go. With regards to sloping sites, while we don't handle them directly, we have what we think is a reasonably innovative way of dealing with stories and datums. And so people who are familiar with ArchiCAD and Revit and those sort of systems are, when you start working on a sloping site with multiple dwellings, the layout of all of those floor levels becomes quite insane. Within Spaces, we actually constrain the stories to each individual building so that they don't interfere with each other. In due course, we're actually going to allow stories across buildings to be linked together. So if you were doing a large building with a sky bridge, obviously it's critical that two datums remain in sync with each other. But at the same stage, we're still thinking about the simple thing. And I've got a building here, starts at 10 meters above the RL. It has 3 meter floor to floors. I can have another building starting at a 7.5 meter RL with 4 meter floor to floors. And that's all completely managed for you without having to go into a story settings dialogue and create 50 stories that are all offset from each other.
Now, Jamie puts forward an interesting question, and I find it insightful because every time we see a new tool, we start thinking of other ways in which it can be used to kind of broaden its use case and make it more exciting and dynamic in terms of how it could fit into our workflows. And his comment and question I'll give to you in one, but given the approach of the sketch engine is completely parametric, it'd be a great way to export the script to Grasshopper for further development and transition into BIM. Who'd like to take the question on that as a potential roadmap direction? It's a nice left field one I guess we didn't expect to think we'd have today.
It's a little bit left field for sure. It's the first time we've been asked that, so I guess I probably need to take the lead on an answer to that. Although we'd all have three different answers to that, I suppose, and who's to say which one's the correct answer? Grasshopper hasn't been something that we have thought about, I guess, to be perfectly honest. To actually wind the clock back a couple of years or 3 years, it's actually 3 years exactly since I was at a conference right before the COVID lockdown. And ironically, I was actually watching a Rhino Grasshopper ArchiCAD demo for about the 300th time, and looking at all of the stuff that goes into setting up a Rhino script and model, or a Grasshopper script rather, and twisting a building, scaling a building, adding levels to a building. And I looked at it and I said, why do you have to set this up every single time? And that became a crystallized thought that sits behind Spaces. Yes, it is highly parametric. We've deliberately taken a parametric approach because it's the right approach to do what we're doing. But we wanted to do it in a very non-developmental type way, non-software engineering. I mean, there's a lot of hype around no code. And we're probably the extreme no code in the fact that we're a sketch. And that's the essence of what we're doing. So, I mean, it's an interesting idea. Definitely something we'll explore. We have a vision to be the go-to conceptual design tool. Now, I say that in a way that doesn't mean that we want to be the only concept design tool, but we want to be seen as the center to a lot of things where you could use Spaces and then send it out for a carbon analysis or an energy analysis or wind analysis. So we very much see integrating into the wider world. And so I guess as part of that, I see there's actually a couple of comments referring to Grasshopper, so something we'll take a look at, and maybe quite honestly, it's the sort of thing that if we went to Grasshopper, maybe that bypasses the need to start looking at native APIs. So thanks for the feedback on that. No plans at the moment is all I'd say, but you've certainly sparked something to look at.
And I think that's the exciting thing about these conversations too, is that smart people come in that haven't seen it before and bring a fresh set of eyes to a solution, and then bring constant or new ideas. Nothing being wrong with being a BIM dinosaur. Hey Geordie, that's cool, mate. We've covered up on sloping sites. Zate, brilliant app. Do the areas when imported from IFC to ArchiCAD automatically become zones?
I will take that. So in the Spaces, these areas are called spaces, and these are transferred as ArchiCAD zones via IFC. Also, the other three-dimensional stuff or Spaces uses, like columns, are transferred to proper IFC columns as well. And with Spaces, they all, as mentioned in the demo, it contains not just the physical shape of the body, but the usage type and the other available metadata that you can put in here. It will be exported to IFC too.
Yep. So Ramon obviously commented on Grasshopper, which we picked up on. Geordie, do you have sun studies now? Site orientation, north direction, location, manual input. So we saw in the presentation that you located a site. I think from a previous presentation, I think you gave me Campbell, I think there was some sun study stuff. Martin, who wants to take this one?
Danny can jump on, I think, because I mean, it's easier to show it than it is to say it. I thought there was a sun study in the webinar there.
Yeah, I thought so.
So once you import a site, or even without importing the site, but switching to the Sun Study tool, you can enter the address, even just a city, to have a rough position of your building. So that's the basis for the Sun Study, and the north is towards the up part of the screen, but you can rotate all of your projects. So if I select, for example, this site, and it happens to be in a different orientation than in the real time, you can still rotate it and position it to the place you like.
We can also adjust the project north direction via the project settings. So if you want to flip it around to the left or the right, or even just an offset angle. So not only do we have the location, but the project north and the little symbol on the plan will update when that's changed.
Geordie's pushing the site detail a little bit further again in terms of the potential of putting in northings and eastings. Is that something that exists yet?
Yes. So if you double tap on the site tool, Danny, then it will open up our site boundary editor, the tool on the toolbar.
And I'll make this bigger. I'll make Danny's screen bigger on the video that we produce as well, guys, so you can see it a bit clearer. So sorry, I missed. So in
this instance, we've introduced the boundary editor. So this is just it's part of our Pro plan, one of our paid subscriptions. So we go into a slightly different editing environment where we maximize the 2D view. And on the left-hand side, we have the ability to enter a site based on bearings and lengths, and you can actually control multiple sites through this process. I won't put Danny on the spot to ask him to come up with that. They're generally easier when you actually have a site to input. They're notoriously difficult to get to close up when you do them on the fly. But yes, we do have an accurate site data entry process that works in the background there. And it just creates a site element the same way as we would with a sketch.
Geordie's been fully answered, which is exciting. You've got a new user. We've got another question from Min. Thanks for the amazing showcase. Is there any plans to release the app onto other operating systems? So I'm assuming that'd be an Android or tablet, other tablet type devices.
I'll take this one. I have a pretty stock answer. We see those other tablets as great opportunities, Windows Surface, Android tablet. We are still a relatively new company, and we're still building out what we see as the really core technology. And so to that mind, we're sticking on what we believe is one of the best platforms in the industry. The iPads have immense computing power, especially when you get into the new 6th gen iPads. Those M2 chips are just astronomically amazing, and it's a solid platform for us to develop on. But we're developing with a view to the future. So much of the code that we're developing in a way where it's actually platform agnostic, but we are just targeting it to the iPad in the first instance. As soon as we introduce a second platform, we need to be ready for that. It introduces a whole lot of business decisions as to whether the two versions remain in sync or not. If you can't remain in sync, how does that help from a customer support point of view? Suddenly help centres need to be indicating that certain things are available on one platform and not the other. So it introduces a whole heap of extra business process and administration, aside from even just the probably an exponential increase in quality control. So it is on our roadmap. Anyone who's familiar with us will see that we've recently raised a good chunk of money to keep the business going. And so that's building out more of our feature set this year, and hopefully by later in the year we'll start seeing the opportunities to move to fresh platforms.
So hopefully that answered all the questions in regards to the different platforms, and you can see right now the challenges that several software vendors are having in maintaining multi-platform approaches to their software at the moment, and it's not an easy feat to be able to do. And then you try and do the right thing and produce it for all the different platforms, and then one of the then the platform that's slightly behind, they feel like the poor cousin. Jamie has also raised the question in regards to point clouds, because the use of point clouds is something that's being heavily adopted these days for placing existing conditions. And I've kept reading, Jamie, and in terms of even being generated with the iPad itself. Campbell, we should have just had a one-on-one, because a lot of these are strategic kind of questions, and it's kind of, I guess, roadmap style questions for you, rather than kind of current features and how they work today. But point clouds and scan and LiDAR off the iPad, are they 100 years away, or is it something that's closer on the roadmap? It's hard, mate. I know.
I'll be honest with this one and say it's not on the roadmap. It's point clouds. Obviously, there is a lot of them around. I mean, thinking a little bit laterally, if we were able to bring a point cloud in, then using a sketch to help trace around that would actually solve one of the major issues around point clouds, is how do you actually take all this point data and turn it into something that's actually a geometric shape. I mean, that's an ongoing challenge. Obviously, the iPad Pros do have LiDAR. They only work to about 10 meters. And because we're pretty well targeting new buildings at the moment, we don't see the benefit of using LiDAR. If we start getting to a point where we feel that spaces could lend itself quite well to renovation, then obviously at that point would be where LiDAR could provide a really quick input mechanism that you could then use to conceptualize. I guess an interesting side point to that, just to come back to the whole idea of conceptual design, our demonstration there, which obviously only took Danny 10 to 15 minutes, concentrated on an entire building form. But the nature of the conceptual design process, especially when you put it into an office environment, is that large buildings work on all different timescales. Car parks, underground work can even be under construction before parts of the building are even designed. And we see spaces just fitting into that workflow perfectly, where you don't even necessarily set out to design an entire building. It might just be that you're doing a shopping mall, 3 sides of which are completely bound in by other infrastructure. And so all you're wanting to do is work on the elevation, which is the public interface for that building. You're not really concerned about anything beyond the street frontage. And that's a little piece of design in itself. And being able to focus on key pieces of design without having to necessarily think about the whole building, we think fits really well with how Spaces fits into the workflow. And to connect that back to the question, that's where I would see us leading if we were moving into renovation, where a LiDAR input could be a really great basis. It might be an existing shopping mall, and what you're wanting to do is bring it into the 21st century. So you scan a little bit of it on site, and then from there, you start doing a series of iterations and design ideas that you can present to the client.
Thanks on that, Campbell. So if there are any other questions, I encourage you to put them into the chat now, because I have a couple of questions left that I have had this whole time that I've waited to ask. So please put them into the chat so that we can close out this webinar. But I'm going to ask you one, Martin, just because you've been rather quiet there, and I know you and I normally have a good chat with one another. And I noticed that this presentation was done as a right-handed thing, and as a left-handed person, my whole life I felt as if the world wasn't made for me. I'm really keen to see whether or not this works as a left-handed version as well.
Yes, yeah, right from the start, Spaces has had the option to flip the screen for left-handed users. I think Danny is just about to demonstrate that for us.
Oh, it's like as if the book has been able to have the spine changed to the other side for me. And I don't have to work over what I've been doing my whole life. No, that's great news.
It's just part of removing the barriers. So whether you're left-handed, right-handed, ArchiCAD, Revit, Vectorworks, it doesn't matter what platform. We want it to be platform agnostic. Whether you're used to using digital design tools or not, we just wanted to make it as accessible as possible, and that was a feature right from the very beginning.
And I guess one last question, and I don't know who knows this off the top of their head, but in terms of, obviously this works only on iPad at the moment, and it'll be for the foreseeable future. If I have an iPad in my office already, what typical iPads will Spaces work on? Who's the tech? Danny, do you want to take this one? Or Campbell again?
Yeah. I can answer this one. So we recommend using the Pro iPads, but that does not mean that Spaces does not run on the basic iPads either. It's just the size of the screen and the performance, which works better and makes it more sketch-like on
You
the
can
Pro
see
version.
that Danny's running an 11-inch iPad there, and so the toolbar on the left-hand side takes up a large chunk of the screen. We have actually had to move to sub-menus just because of the number of tools, and we're constantly iterating the design. But basically, we'll run on any iPad with a pencil. Even the first-generation pencil is perfectly fine. And so if there is one of those floating around your office, it's a great way to learn the software. And if you start seeing value, I mean, iPads obviously are actually getting quite a lot more expensive these days as the technology improves, but they're still cheaper than equivalent laptops, and you can still use them anywhere. I mean, portability is a key part of what Spaces is all about. Detaching yourself from the desktop, working on the subway in the morning, at the coffee shop, at the beach, wherever you want to be. But yeah, any iPad to learn it would be great. And then as you see value, I'm sure you'd decide that investing in 11-inch, and if you're turning it into something that you're going to use to present to customers, then the 12.9-inch Pro, obviously top of the line, obviously, but makes for a very nice device, and it's easy to use. So you can even give it to your client, and they can start navigating the 3D and everything. It's not, you don't need to teach them anything. You can give it to your 3-year-old, and they'll probably be able to draw buildings with it. I've actually had one of my director's kids taught the director how to use it, because they just jumped on it for half an hour and showed their mum how to do it. So very easy to get going with.
Now, there's only one other question on there, and this is I always like these thoughtful questions. Available only on the App Store or open for reselling? I always like those questions, Campbell, the entrepreneur in people. I'll leave that one to you.
It is an iStore app at the moment, App Store. I mean, it's part of delivering apps to iPads that we're part of the Apple ecosystem. Reselling opportunities is something we've had a few queries about. It's a low cost subscription based piece of software, so it presents some challenges, shall we say, with regards to how we would enter into reselling agreements. But I mean, Nathan will be able to tell people my email address. It's just campbell@ceruleanlabs.io. So if you are interested, I'm more than happy to have discussions. It's not part of our strategic plan at the moment. But just the same way as we worked with Nathan on this webinar, then we're always open to working with key people in the industry, and have discussions around that.
So that looks like the questions have gone a lot longer than we planned. I originally thought we'd probably have about 20 minutes worth of questions to make this a sub 40-minute webinar, but we've almost gone for a full hour, which shows the level of excitement we're having from the community in the platform, which is kind of, I guess, aligned with why I wanted to have you guys on in the first place, because I think it's something that will excite industry once they get their eyes on it. Now, for those that are watching this video on the Skewed website, there is a blue button at the bottom of this page where you can click on that to learn more about Spaces, which will take you to the Spaces website. So if you do have an interest, you can click on that and then gain access to the Spaces website to learn a lot more about what Spaces is all about. But Campbell, Danny and Martin, thank you very much for your time this morning over in Europe. And from here in Australia, we're closing out into the evening right now. But thank you very much for your time, and I look forward to seeing the development of Spaces as you move forward into the next couple of years, because it's moved so far already, and I think that the sky's the limit in terms of the pace in which you guys are developing this app. So congratulations.
Thanks, Nathan. And as you said, there's a link on your website there for people to investigate us further, which we encourage them to do so. But they'll be able to go in, they'll be able to sign up. There's a free version to get access to a trial. If they do that for the month of March, for anybody that's been here for the webinar, we've set up a discount coupon for them, which is Skewed 20, so they can access that and get a discount. But they just need to get involved during this month, and they'll have access to that. So it's just to try and say thank you to everybody for joining us, whether it be the morning or evening, wherever they are in the world. But thanks to you and to everybody for attending.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks
have a good
for having
one.
us.